with Bishop Dale C. Bronner.
He's just an incredibly glorious, glorious Lord. Well, if you would turn in your Bibles to the 11th chapter of the book of Genesis, Genesis chapter 11. I didn't know exactly whether I should speak this particular message in this session or not. I asked the Lord for a sign. I rarely do that. And because I'm going to talk in this session about handling bumps in the road. Bumps in the road. And I flew home today from Washington, D.C., from ministering there yesterday. And as the plane was taxiing out on the runway, it felt like we were just dipping into potholes. I'm like, I've never had turbulence before on the ground in the airplane. I'm like, what in the world? I'm looking out of the window trying to see, were we just going in and out of a series of potholes? And just as soon as I said that, I said, Lord, I get the confirmation. Bumps in the road. That's the first time I've ever been on as many planes as I have been on that I just felt like we were driving in and out of potholes, taxiing out on the tarmac to take off. And so I hope that you are enriched by the word of the Lord as we share some things that will, I believe, help us in handling some of the bumps in the road. It is fairy tale-ish for you to live life and not expect there to be some bumps in the road. Even automobile manufacturers have sense enough to know that even though they might build the finest automobile, they're going to put some shock absorbers on that car because they know that there are going to be bumps in the road. You'll hit bumps in the road in your marriage. You'll hit bumps in the road in parenting and trying to raise children. Where you're just smacked with something that you didn't see it coming. You just hit it, you dip down into it. You never thought that you would be in this place. Some of the things that might have happened to some of you recently, you might have said, you know what, I would see other people dealing with this, but I never thought that it would be me. And you hit bumps in the road. You start a business, and you hit a bump in the road. Whatever it is, things rarely ever go fully according to your plan. Have you lived long enough to discover that there are going to be some things that happen that you never thought that you would deal with, that you would never imagine? Sometimes I see older people, and I see them with all kinds of sometimes crippling diseases and hobbling and this and that, and I wonder, what is your story? What happened to this person? When did this happen? When did you get in that condition? And you realize that at some point in their life, they hit a bump in the road. They get down the road and the marriage falls apart, huge bump in the road. And they never imagine that when God put something in their heart, that they would experience a bump in the road. When Joseph had a dream given by God, he never thought that he would hit a bump in the road. He had all of these lofty, positive dreams that had him in a very high and elevated position, and all of his family making obeisance to him, bowing down. He saw all of that, and God confirmed it. All of these wonderful dreams, and they were confirming him in a lofty place. But there were bumps in the road that God never showed him in the dream. God's vision and dream in your life will rarely ever show you the bumps in the road. But just as sure as I am standing here, there are bumps in the road, whether it's in your vision or not. And the best thing that you can do is to be able to have the best shock absorbers to handle bumps in the road. Are you listening? There are some shock absorbers, and that's what I want to deal with, is some shock absorbers that'll help you to deal with the bumps in the road when things didn't go according to plan and they start falling to pieces, and you have dipped down into some situations of things that you never perhaps thought that you would deal with, whether it is with your health, whether it's relationships, whether it's finances, whether it's something that happens in your educational journey. There are bumps in the road. There are bumps in the road. There's a monkey wrench that is thrown into the equation, and it's like I never thought that I would see myself in this position. But there are bumps in the road, and you just have to plan for it. You have to plan to be able to absorb the shock of the bumps in the road so that when you hit them, they don't just completely throw your alignment off and mess your life up for the rest of your life. Is that okay? And so this is what we want to see here from Genesis chapter 11, very simple passage of scripture beginning with verse 27. Genesis chapter 11 and verse 27. Notice this. This is the genealogy of Terah. Terah begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Haran begat Lot. And Haran died before his father Terah in his native land in Ur of the Chaldeans. And then Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife Milcah, and the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Iscah. But Sarai was barren, and she had no child. And Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son Abram's wife, and they went out with them from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan. And they came to Haran and dwelt there. And so the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. Bumps in the road. Now, all of us know that God gave Abraham a clear vision of a destiny of going into a land that he would show him. It was the land of Canaan. It was to be a blessed place. And they had bumps in the road that Abraham just did not see coming. He didn't see the attacks. He didn't see the problems that he would encounter. But I want you to remember that in the same way, the Apostle Peter said, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial, which is to do what? To try you. He says, listen, there's going to be some stuff that's going to happen that is going to look like it is totally discombobulating the master plan of what God has already planned for your life. Some things that are going to look like it has short-circuited what God is trying to do in your life, that's trying to threaten the vision or the dream that God gave you, the calling, the destiny that God placed in you. There's going to be something that will come and challenge it. Whenever God gives a prophetic promise, there will always be opposition to it. If you don't have opposition in something that God calls you to do, God didn't call you to do it. I mean, if everything just flows your way, every door just open, no, that's something you're going to have to knock on some doors. And you're going to have to come back and knock again sometimes. And it's going to take longer than you thought, and it'll cost more than what you estimated. Bumps in the road. Nobody, I mean, if you're making the journey, you know how we are when we travel. You have a little travel budget. You don't have a whole lot of money. You have to budget your money. And you got to figure out, let me see how many days we're going to eat out. And let me see, we're going to spend that. We're going to eat our breakfast in. We'll get a box of cereal and some milk. And, and you start trying to figure certain things out. You want to be able to figure out how you can carry your food with you. Sometimes when I travel, I'm like, I don't want to buy food in the airport. They put on it's expensive. I told them, I said, listen, for this drink, I said, I ought to have a meal with this. And so you're going to pay more, and so maybe you ought to just take your own food. Now sometimes I see other foreigners there, and they'll pull out a plastic container, and they got some beans in it and rice and all kind of funny smelling herbs and stuff. And I'm like, I understand what you're doing. It's not that you don't necessarily like the food in the airport here, but you are saving money. I recognize people when they're on a budget. See, years ago, when people of color used to travel, they used to get on the bus with a greasy bag. They had their fried chicken. They carried their meals with them. It was for a different reason now, of course, because they couldn't just stop anywhere and be served. So they carried their meal with them, and of course, it was cost effective. So you're going to have bumps in the road. God will call you to go places where there will be bumps in the road, and you're going to have to learn how to circumnavigate some of those obstacles that are going to be thrown in the roadway to be able to deal with it. So now here, God clearly gives Abraham a vision, calls him from his hometown, Ur of the Chaldeans. These were pagan worshipers. And God says, listen, I got to get you out of that atmosphere. I've got to do something different with you. Was a place that was known for worship of the moon. Worship of the moon. It was a deeply, deeply pagan land. And as you'll notice, Abraham's father, Terah, brought them out of And at the time, of course, he didn't realize that his destination was Canaan. And so they stopped in Haran. Now, you remember the word of the Lord that came to Abraham. It was for him to get up and to leave out of that place and go without his family. In fact, you'll notice in Genesis chapter 12, notice what God said. Now the Lord had said to Abraham, he had already said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house to a land that I'll show you. Guess who is the first person that Abram takes with him? Papi. He takes daddy with him. Now, the word of the, notice here in verse 1, it says the Lord had already said to Abram. He'd already said, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house. And he takes daddy with him. How many of you know that the will of God is going to win out in the end? I don't care what you do. Our disobedience, our hard-headedness, our cantankerous attitude, our stubbornness, our rebellion, our contumacy, all of that will still not stop the will of God. It may delay it, but it won't stop it. You have a bump in the road. Sometimes your bump in the road is a flat tire. It'll delay you, but it won't stop you. You will survive flat tires. If you hit a pothole hard enough, you can burst your tire. But you can survive pothole tire busters. You simply have to be delayed. You're going to have to make a phone call and let somebody know I'm going to be running a little late. So there are certain things that we can do based on our response that can cause us to actually be delayed. In fact, do you know what Abram's daddy's name means? Terah, T-E-R-A-H? Terah or Terah? It means delay. God says, get away from your father's house, and he took daddy with him. How many of you know if you take daddy with him, you are taking father's house? Because he's going to put his 2 cents in wherever you go. It's just hard to be your own self, your own person, when you take daddy with you. Because he's going to say something. Well, I don't see why you got to get them chewing all that kind of food. I didn't do that with y'all. You just see you're spoiling them. See, that's where you're going wrong right there. You're taking that influence with you. When God says leave, what does leave mean? Leave. And if you don't leave right, you're not going to be able to cleave right. There's a reason that God specifically told him to leave. Now, listen, is God against the family? Absolutely not. In fact, God emphatically loves the family. In fact, may I tell you this, in Old English, the word family, you know what it literally means? Father's house. The word family literally means father's house. And so the Lord specifically spoke to Abram and said, I want you to leave your country, leave everything that is familiar to you, leave the traditions that you have been raised in and steeped in, and get out of that environment, because everything happens in an environment. Everything happens in an environment, and there are certain things that God wants to do. It is not an indictment necessarily on Father's house, but it may be an indictment in jeopardizing the destiny that God has for you if you're still in Father's house. Because there are certain things, there's a place that every destiny is designed to be fulfilled. And so it'll lead you generally from the place where you are. Every destiny leads you someplace. You don't stay in the same place and reach destiny. God cannot lead a parked car. As many as are led by the Spirit of God, they are the children of God, the sons of God. So God has to lead us. And you will have, as you are being led, you're going to experience bumps in the road. Now, if you're not moving anywhere, you don't ever have to concern yourself with bumps. Now, that's a fact. If you are not moving, you will never have to concern yourself with bumps. But you know, in order to get anywhere, you got to put the car in which gear? Drive. Will you get there going in neutral? Unless you're just down at the bottom of the hill. The only place that you get in neutral is to the lowest point. And so you got to get in drive if you're really going to go someplace. And so you'll experience some bumps in the road. So Abram took delay with him. His dad's name, Terah or Terah, means delay. Delay. He took delay with you. Have you ever taken people with you and it slowed you down? And you get mad and you're like, y'all, come on, come on. I look back in retrospect now, and sometimes, you know, I tell my family, I said, listen, all y'all go to the bathroom now. I said, because when Daddy gets behind the wheel, we are not stopping. We are not, your bladder will explode. We are not stopping. Go now. And when we do stop someplace, you know, I'm like, go to the bathroom now. Because we're not going to get back in the car and then 10, 20 minutes later you tell me, I got to go to the bathroom. Because I don't like delay. I don't like terror. Delay is a real terror. It really is. And so if you don't like the terror, then you have to do something to sort of circumvent that, prevent that from happening in your life. So don't settle on your way to destiny. Don't settle on your way to destiny. Don't let the circumstances get you so discouraged and angry and bitter, and then it leaves you burned out. Because Abram took his daddy, Terah, or delay, with him. And guess where they ended up resting? They came to a place called Haran. You know what the name Haran means? A dry, parched, burned out place. Have you ever come to a place in your life where you hit a dry spell? You know, you've been in some places where God was just blessing, just flowing to you. This stuff just flowing. God just speaking to you. You just feel His presence every time you know. And then you were doing the same thing. You were still on the same, moving on the same road, and you hit a dry patch. You came in a dry season. Looked like you couldn't get a word from God. Looked like everybody around you was getting blessed but you. You're just in a dry place. And you've hit a bump in the road. And now you're trying to figure out, how do I do this? So notice, here Abram was disobeying the voice of the Lord when God told him, get away from your country and away from your father's house. And he takes his father's house with him, in that he took his relative Lot and he took his relative, his daddy. And he takes part of his family with him. And God had just spoken to him and said, listen, get out and leave your family, your country, and go into a place that I will show you. And where God was trying to show him was Canaan. But because he took terror or delay with him, God had to let them go into a dry place, a parched place, a burnt-out place, so that the delay would lead them. And his daddy, Terah, died in Haran. You don't know why God will let you break down in the places that you do. Now let me say this to you. Oftentimes, if you don't understand the purpose of fire, you will resent fire in your life. The Lord showed this to me several years ago, that one of the main purposes of fire is not to destroy you, but it is to destroy what is trying to destroy you. Are you listening? When you go through the fire, we are purged, we are purified, so impure stuff gets burned off. And the only reason that we sometimes go through hell is to drop the demons off who have been riding us. Are you listening? You wonder, why in the world am I going through all of this hell? It's because that's the abode of demon spirits, and when they have been riding you, God will take you through hell, and you end up getting those demon spirits off of you. You deliver them to their assignment, to their destination, and when you come out of the hell, then your back and load is lighter. You got clarity of mind. You are delivered. And so Terah was riding Abram, and he came to Haran, the dry, parched, burned out place. That place was hell for him. A barren place to be locked up with his dad is still trying to tell him what to do. And he's like, I'm grown, I got a wife now. But he was with his daddy. And see, there's a saying that says that a man doesn't fully grow up until his daddy dies. And his daddy died in the dry, parched, burned out place. He dropped him off. He wasn't designed for his destiny. Now, it doesn't mean that he was an evil person. It doesn't mean that he went to hell. I'm not saying that. There are just some individuals that are good people who are not designed to go where you are going. Yeah, just think about it. You're on the bus. And just because somebody else gets off at another stop doesn't mean you should get off there. You're going to another place. You know, folks can only go so far with you, and they'll have to get off. If you live long enough, older people, they're going to end up getting off at different exits, and you still on the bus. You still on your journey, and you've got to keep living. You've got to continue to continue what God has started in your life. You want to stay on your journey. But just because you hit a bump in the road, and when somebody dear to you dies, that's a huge bump in the road. How do I now regroup? I've been so used to Daddy telling me what to do. And there are times that God has to let influences that have been telling you what to do be removed from your life so that now you can follow what God really wants you to do. I am not saying that God does not speak to you through godly mothers and fathers. He does. Understand that very clearly. God does. God will use godly parents to help guide their children. But they can only take them so far on the journey, and then you have to trust them under God. You see, our responsibility is to take children from being dependent on us to becoming independent of us to becoming dependent on God. And so I believe that Haran was this place, this fiery, dry place, hot heat, and it consumed the delay that was in Abram's life. And you never know why God lets certain things wait, because he's waiting on some stuff that is demonic and satanic in your life to die. He's waiting on that stuff to die. Why do you think that Israel spent 40 years in making a journey that could have been made in 3 months? So that all of that Egypt mentality would die in the wilderness. Moses had an easier time getting them out than he did getting them in. The problem was not trying to get them out of Egypt. The problem was trying to get Egypt out of them. And because God couldn't get Egypt out of them, he consumed them in the desert in a hot, dry place. He let all of those spirits perish out there in the desert. Is this making sense to you? That there are things along the journey that will drop off from your life, that you started out with, that will drop off, that will wait to you. And you don't see it as a blessing at the time. Remember, life can only be lived forward, but it's only understood backward. And so there are some things that will be purged from your life that you'll have to honestly trust God for. So don't let fear and lack keep you in Haran. Don't let fear and lack keep you in a dry, parched, burned out place. The whole thing is to be able to stay there sometimes and make a memorial to your daddy who died there. And God says, listen, you can't stay here. You got to keep it moving. Touch your neighbor, say, keep it moving. See, now notice here the promise that God was giving Abram in Genesis chapter 12. And the Lord had said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house to a land that I will show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. God says, you get away from your family, and I'll do something in families because I love families. God says, I will do something, and I will bless every family if you can walk away from where you are, from the environment, if you can just change that environment. And so sometimes in order to fulfill God's will in your life, you've actually got to break away from home, from the old way of doing things. You've got to break away from the belief systems under which you have been raised. I call that, you want to know what I call it? I call that breaking away from the BS. The belief system. What were you thinking? Yes, absolutely. You have to break away from the BS that hinders you, the belief systems that are hindering you. You may be in an old pattern of belief system, and you have to break away from that. If you are operating on a belief system, it can hold you in bondage. And see, so what God was really moving Abram from was hindering belief system, not people, but belief systems. They were belief systems, opinions, attitudes, lifestyles of family members who never sought their destiny. Do you know certain places of people, and everybody back in your hometown is still there, and it's not necessarily the most progressive place. They are still there. I want you to just take a look at the people. How many of you all were not born here in Metro Atlanta? Raise your hand. Look around. Look at folks that were led. You see that? They were led. Folks that were led. Now, I am a native of Atlanta. I've been here all of my life. But my destiny has taken me so many places from here.
Thank you for watching Power for Living with Bishop Dale C. Bronner. Until next time, God bless you.